more interviews than the demands of our work permits. It's best that in response to them, we also at the same time notify others that we're going to be having a media briefing today. And that's why we're here. But before I make my brief remarks in relation to the annual report, let me be very upfront about how I perceive the purpose of this media briefing to be. I'm aware that there has been a lot of hunger out there to ask me questions that have got nothing to do with the performance of the courts. And I got a sense that some thought that I was somehow running away from having questions put to me. And I realized that people really don't understand me. I'm not the sort that runs away from his responsibilities. I'm not the sort that runs away from confronting issues that needs to be confronted. I believe with all of my heart that everybody, particularly leaders, must own up to their utterances, must own up to their actions, must assume full responsibility for everything they say. It is irresponsible of any leader to shy away from dealing with issues flowing out of what he or she has said. So I'm upfront in saying I'm here to present myself for questioning on anything, even if your questions would be about everything except the Judicial Accountability Report. I am here to tackle those questions as frontally as circumstances demand that I do. Turning to the Judicial Accountability Report, I'll be brief because the foreword to the annual report is structured in such a way as to be a combination of both what a foreword is ordinarily supposed to entail, as well as the speech that I would ordinarily have delivered during the meeting convened for the purpose of presenting the Judicial Accountability Report. So it's comprehensive enough for anybody who wants to know what my thoughts are as the leader of the judiciary to understand where I stand. But just a brief synopsis. You would recall that in response to or as a reaction to questions that sometimes flow from how our report is compiled, we have deemed it necessary just to give the public a sense of what informs our ability and inability to meet the targets that we set for ourselves. And as I indicated in the past, our targets are nothing more but an aspirational goal. Ideally, our target should be 100%, but there are so many circumstances contesting for our ability to discharge our mandate as admirably as we would want to, as a result of which we're not always able to meet the target that we have set for ourselves. What I also want to say is this. I have indicated how different courts perform and what informs that. I've touched on programs that we've set ourselves to implement that we have not been able to implement. I've touched on the significance of the informatization program that we have for years been talking about. Unfortunately, funding has not made it possible for us to implement it as fully as we should have, which, by the way, would have come in handy had it been implemented timelessly during the lockdown period. So there's a wide range of issues there that I have covered, which I believe you're quite familiar with. You would recall that last year we touched on the tools that we were developing for the magistracy, so that going forward we factor the magistracy in the annual report, the performance of the magistrates court. Something is there about the performance of the magistrates court. It's early days for the broader judiciary. Our aim is to be able to provide a much broader accountability report than we've been able to. But what we have seen, the best practices that we have noted from other jurisdictions, have informed us that what makes this possible is a fully digitized court system, because that system is able to take much more than a document like this can. And more importantly, when you report in this manner, it's more about the fundamentals. It's not about each and everything. You can't be reporting on how each magistrate, how each judge performs. You'll have a book so voluminous that people would just be intimidated from reading it upon sight of it. So in a nutshell, that's where we are. We're grateful that we are here. We are here to account. We're satisfied with the progress that we were able to make under extremely challenging circumstances. And I will end it here because, as I said, I've got a sense that there are more questions in the offing for me than about other things than about the accountability report, and I'm here for that. Over to you, Mr. Mogoeng.
Thank you, Chief Justice, for that opening remark and the briefing. Colleagues, you have the opportunity to ask questions. And also the colleagues who are joining us online, you just raise your hand, and when I call your name, then you'll be able to speak. If I don't know your name, I'll just point you out. We start with you, sir, and you, madam, and I think for now, those will be the two questions.
Bongile Tumago, SABC News, Molweni Betu. Well, CJ, I want to ask, yesterday, right here at Tembisa Hospital, you delivered the keynote address there, and then at the end you closed with that prayer. Some of us tweeted that prayer, and there's been quite a lot of backlash in as far as the contents thereof. Among the things that were raised was the fact that there is some politicking that is taking place within that prayer of yours. Any reaction to what, if you would have seen so far, to what has been happening on Twitter? I know you're not friends with Twitter, but there's been a lot of negative comments coming to you with what you've said there on the vaccine specifically for COVID-19.
I don't know whether people, I haven't been paying attention to Twitter. I honestly do pay very little attention to the media. I don't know whether people honestly misunderstood what I said or deliberately misunderstood what I said. And maybe it's necessary to reiterate what I said. I said, if there is any vaccine that is being manufactured to advance a satanic agenda of the mark of the beast 666, if there is any vaccine that is being manufactured for the purpose of corrupting the DNA of people, that vaccine must be burned, it must die. God must intervene and destroy it. So anybody who supports a vaccine that infuses 666 in the bodies of people, anybody who supports a vaccine that is meant to corrupt the DNA of people, I would understand if they raise an alarm. That's it. I want every corrupt thing to be destroyed. And if it is politics, it is the kind of politics that I'm happy to advance anytime, anywhere. So people must come out. Do they support the satanic agenda? They must tell us what. They want us to have a 666 mark. They must tell us what. I'm not saying all vaccines, and I never say all vaccines are meant to advance their agenda. But if people want it to be made to look like, that's what I was saying, that's their problem. I'm never worried about backlash, because I've realized something. It's almost as if for you to be positively reported on, you must check what is it that people are likely to be favorably disposed to. What will the analysts say, the regular analyst I must say? What will the media say? I'm not that kind of a person. I don't live to be approved of. I don't suffer from affirmation or approval addiction. I reflect on what I believe needs to be said at any particular time, and I say it. Whoever wants to run wild with it is free to do that. I will never look backwards to check who is happy with what I'm saying, who is unhappy. I am independent-minded. For far too long, people have been afraid to express themselves as freely and as robustly as they need to. Remember, we just delivered a judgment as the Constitutional Court recently about the fundamental importance of freedom of expression, the EFF judgment. So people are not going to be allowed to manipulate us, to force us to toe their line, to think the way they think everybody else in this country and around the world ought to think. I'm not in that category. I'm not worried about fictional reputation. Oh, this is how a Chief Justice is supposed to behave. This is how a judge is supposed to behave. Where is the manual for that? Where do you get it from? What are you trying to have us comply with? I'm not a conformist. Our country, our constitution does not demand of us to be that way. So I didn't watch the backlash, but maybe it was not unexpected. Remember what I said to the CEO and the chairman? I said, you know, if they come against you for what I'm going to say, because I know prayer is controversial in South Africa. Insults are never controversial. No, it is prayer in the name of Jesus that is controversial. All other prayers are fine. So I'm not going to be begging for permission to pray. Never. In public and in private. I'm going to pray all the more. It is my constitutional right. I'm a Christian. I'm not going to be hypocritical. Being a robust Christian in private, in public, I pretend. Maybe so that when I deliver judgments that are in line with my Christian principles, people cannot spot it. I'm not that kind. We need to be open, we need to be transparent, and that's where I am.
Okay. Madam, over to you.
Slinda Lomasigane from ENCA. Just to add on to my colleagues' questions, where do you get this information from, Chief Justice, about a vaccine that's alleged to infuse the Antichrist in people's DNA? My second question is, you have been criticized for not being able to separate your religious beliefs from your office. Do you think those criticizing you are missing the point, perhaps?
Well, for starters, one, did I assert as a fact that there are vaccines with 666? Two, where do you get this thing of separating my judicial responsibilities from my Christian beliefs from? Where can we look for it, in the Constitution or anywhere else? The last time I checked the Constitution, it lists among the fundamental rights freedom of religion, freedom of opinion, and freedom of thought. And two, not only does the preamble to our Constitution talk about God, for God to protect us and to bless us, but the national anthem also alludes to the need for us. In fact, it's a prayer for God to protect us. So where do we get this thing from? Some people say we are a secular state, but what is the meaning of a secular state? A secular state is not a state that is anti-religion. It is a state that is against the imposition of one religion to the exclusion of others. So this notion that you must separate the state from religion is misplaced. So where do you get it from? If you have it, point me to it so that I can address it. And so the thing about the vaccine, I'm not asserting it as a fact. I know that there is a lot of corruption in the world. In South Africa, in Africa, and elsewhere in the world. Look at what allegedly happened to the money that was allocated for the protection of people in this era. What happened? I tell you, if I had prayed openly before allegations of corruption in relation to that matter surfaced, if I had said, Lord, anybody who's going to be involved in corruption in relation to this money, deal with that person. You know what the response was going to be? The same question you are asking. Where did you get the information from that there is corruption in relation to the funding for COVID-19 related matters? So I'm crying unto God. Whether you call it politics or not, it's neither here nor there for me. And I won't stop doing it. I'm crying unto God. If there is any vaccine, I don't want it. I'm crying unto God for, this is the end time according to we Christians. So if there is any vaccine with 666, I want God to destroy it. If there is any vaccine meant to corrupt the DNA of people, I'm asking God to interrupt with it. Any clean vaccine, they must produce it quickly. People need that for their own health. So if anybody is going, don't pray against 666. Don't pray against Satan. Don't pray against corruption of the DNA. They can criticize until. I'm not worried about that.
Just lastly on my part, lastly on my part, Chief Justice, the issue is that some of the scientists who form part of the ministerial committee that's advising government on how to deal with this pandemic are criticizing you and saying that a person of your stature, you're misleading people with that prayer by alluding to the fact that there could possibly be a vaccine that could infuse the Antichrist in people's DNA.
Well, people are not fools, and maybe there is an assumption that our people are thoughtless, and maybe there is an assumption that whatever somebody says in the public domain, our people are so foolish that they will swallow it without reflection. I refuse to buy into the narrative that our people are idiots, our people are thoughtless, our people will just embrace whatever Mogoeng says because it's in the public domain. Here is my position. My prayer is meant actually, and I hope it does, touch every well-meaning Christian to cry unto God and say, Lord, indeed, if there is any vaccine that would have this result, if there is any vaccine that would negatively affect the lives of people, that vaccine must never see the light of day. So people must pray against that. It's important. You can't say we must, as Christians, just hold our arms and say, yeah, no, whatever people come up with is fine. No, we can't. People must pray. People must pray. Not everybody accept, as you've reported. Some people have already said, no, this is wrong. Those are the people who will never buy into this. It's a clear indication that our people are not idiots. They are not just going to embrace what I say. Others will take it as a prayer point. Others will reject it for whatever reason. That's how it's supposed to be. So I'm not going to be saying, hey, the scientists are saying this. No, I'm not a scientist. I'm a prayer warrior. And I'm encouraging prayer warriors to pray.
Okay. Thank you so much. Okay, Chief Justice, again, in that prayer that you delivered, Imabane at Tembisa,
Yes.
Before you said what I'm going to say right now, you did make mention of the fact that I will not apologize for praying.
Yes.
And then you reached out to God to say, judge those
Yes.
who continue to perpetuate corruption,
Yes.
to enrich themselves
Yes.
and their friends. Any names behind
No.
that statement?
No. And that is the same thing with this prayer against the vaccines. The reality is there is corruption in South Africa, in Africa, and in the world. Why should I be targeting people? Do I know who is corrupt? Was I there when they committed corruption? How can I name people? I'm basically saying, I believe that we know so much about corruption practitioners in South Africa and across the nations of the world. But God knows everything. So anybody who's looking clean and smart, in fact, pointing fingers at others as the corrupt, when in fact they are themselves corrupt, they must be exposed. I don't have the power to do that, but I'm asking God, in whose unlimited power I have confidence, to expose them, and if they don't repent, to judge them, and judge them speedily and harshly. That's where I'm coming from. The same, I mean, you can't tell me there is no medication with side effects. You can't tell me that. So what is this about this vaccine that people must believe that there can't be anything wrong about it? What is it? What are we afraid of? Why do we want to beat people into silence about it? Why? We must speak freely about this thing. It's a free country. We must speak freely even about the origins of coronavirus. We must speak freely. This is a free country. People must be very careful about wanting to take us back to the era of colonialism and apartheid, where freedom of thought and opinion was not allowed. They must be very careful. And I'm not going to be silenced. I don't care about the consequences. We've been quiet for far too long, towing the line. I'm not going to tow any line. And it doesn't matter how many people criticize me. When I believe that I need to address this issue, I'm going to do it. When I feel the prompting of God to address it, I will. I'm not going to look back and say, hey, they are coming. You know what they have done to you ever since you were nominated for the position of Chief Justice, and they never stopped. They are coming. People have been critical ever since. What has it achieved? It has never been able to bring me down as was apparently hoped for. And I'm still there. This God has never failed me.
I don't know if you have follow-ups. I don't see hands from the colleagues who are joining online. Am I missing? Oh, I'm so sorry. I couldn't see you. Go for it.
Sure. Bernadette Wicks, the Citizen. I have a couple of questions. So I do have one question on what you were saying yesterday, and that's really just a question of clarity. Essentially, what I'd like to understand is, if I'd be correct in saying what you were praying against was a vaccine that would carry with it dangerous side effects or anything like that. So I just want to understand that I understand correctly.
That is it. And if there is any vaccine that is deliberately intended to do harm to people, that vaccine must never see the light of day.
Okay.
And any other medication, by the way, I extend it to any other medication that is intended to be harmful or that will accidentally be harmful to the people in this country, in this continent, and around the world. That medication must never see the light of day. I cry unto God to stop it from seeing the light of day.
And then along the same lines, following on from that, when and if a vaccine does become available here in South Africa, I just want some clarity in terms of whether or not you would encourage people to take up that vaccine and to get vaccinated.
No, it's not my, I don't know anything about vaccines. What I can say now is that I don't think the vaccine must ever be compulsory. I saw something to the effect that, and I hope it was a lie, a statement attributed to a very important global organization, to the effect that they are considering e-vaccine or e-vaccination certificate for traveling. It must be voluntary. People must just run tests on us. If we are not positive, they must allow us to travel. You can't impose a vaccine on people. Why should you? Why should I have a vaccine in my system if I'm not positive? So those who bear the responsibility to make sure that the vaccine works, those who can vouch for the effectiveness of the vaccine and that it doesn't have negative side effects, must be the ones to propagate it. I'm not a scientist, but what I do is that I'll pray for God's intervention.
And then I have a couple of questions about the report, about the annual report. So the first one is also a question of clarity. It's around the tables indicating the different courts' performances. I just want to understand the baseline. So when we talk about total cases on those tables, are we talking about new cases that come to the court during the period under review, or are we talking about new cases and cases that have been on the roll for an extended period of time, for example? Yeah, if I could just have some clarity on that.
What page is that, ma'am?
Oh, let me just grab it quickly.
Here.
It was under...
The performance information is,
Yes.
is on page 27. So
Okay.
if you could refer to a specific page.
Okay, yeah. So page 27. Performance of the Superior Courts for the period April 2019 to March 2020. So if we look at that table, it obviously has the title on the far left, and then it says total cases, then it says finalized, then it says percentage. I just want a sense of where we get the total cases from. If that is the overall cases that have been sitting on the roll potentially since the previous period, or if that's just new cases that were enrolled during this period.
You want to take it now?
Yeah.
Okay.
If I may assist there, madam, on page 29, I think that's what we're referring to. So we have total cases for all indicators and we have finalized cases. So all that appears there. Remember that the judges would have set their own indicators. So you have to go and check the indicators at the back so that you contextualize what is being reported on. Otherwise, if you don't do that, then you would ask a question that would struggle to respond to. Because the target, what we report on is specific to the target that was set, and that's what it is. So all of those cases finalized, you'll find an indicator at the back that describes what is being measured and how it's being measured.
And does it also include a description of what they mean by total cases?
Absolutely, yes.
And then, sorry, like I said, I have a couple of
No,
questions.
please, ma'am, feel free. We're here. I'm not going anywhere until you're done.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
So you spoke in the report about the pre-existing comprehensive and futuristic court automation master plan, and you mentioned it now when you were speaking as well. Are you able to give us a sense of, I did a little bit of Googling before, and I couldn't really find much on
A
it.
sense of?
A sense of what that sort of court automation master plan looks like. What that this futuristic plan looks like. I know you said budgetary-wise, it's obviously been, but it's taken some time to implement, but if there's any sense of when we might start to see the courts functioning like this.
Well, the when really, as I indicated, depends on the availability of the resources. You would recall that it's something that we raised as far back, I think, as 2013. And we worked on the plan, finalized it, but the budget is simply not available for us to be able to do that. Ideally, and what we would want to see happening in this regard is, from even our law reports, instead of passing our law reports on to our judgments rather, to Juta and Butterworths for them to compile them and sell them back to us, we would want to do what jurisdictions like Ghana and Singapore and Qatar have done. You capture your own judgments, reportable or unreportable, and you make them available. You know, some jurisdictions, Qatar even makes them available to practitioners for free. They make them available to the public for free. And given our financial constraints, we may wish to charge a little fee for certain people. So you compile that, you have them readily available for all who may be interested in reading your judgments. Two, you also have, maybe I should rush to court hearings. Most of the witnesses, whether it would be for a commission or whatever, most of the witnesses who are abroad, instead of paying as much money as we pay for them to travel at great inconvenience to them and accommodating them, they would be able to testify from where they are, even from within the country. All we have to do is satisfy ourselves that the person who's going to testify is the person whose testimony we're really interested in. They can be testifying from Polokwane and we are here. That system, we've seen it work in other jurisdictions, it works well. E-filing, these voluminous records can be phased out and people can simply access them, file them and access them, from the system. What we will still reserve room for paper, because some people who may be in far removed areas that are not as technologically advanced as your towns and cities may still need that. When we visited Malaysia, we realized that there is still room for a minority of people who still need paper and so on and so on. So e-filing, court hearings, and all documentation, we would want to see ourselves moving towards the stage where we are a paperless court. And when that happens, you'll see the problem that we had here with our IT system would not have had the profound negative effect that it had if we had moved into that space. Because what it requires is that you have your nerve center here, but you also have your offsite nerve center. When this system collapses, you still have full access to all the information you need in relation to cases elsewhere. But that requires a full team of technicians to attend to your system. Just to give you an example, when we visited the Federal District Court of Arizona in Phoenix, they had about 13 highly qualified technicians just for that court. And those are the capacities we need so that we can run the system as efficiently as possible. The technicians who will ensure that the firewalls around our systems are as tight as can be. You know, I was talking to colleagues in China. One of their, I forgot the name of it, but that's where their technology really started at the highest level. They've got an e-court there. You remove the information from that system, the court collapses. I said, how do you get it right? What kind of firewalls did you build around your nerve center? They said we went all the way. It's virtually impossible to penetrate our system. Those are the kind of things we would want to build into our information system.
And then, this is the last one. In your forward, you said that cases wouldn't have piled up as much as they have during lockdown. Obviously, the figures that are contained in this report only go up to March, so really they don't include, or they're not reflective of the impact that the lockdown would have had on the judiciary or on the functioning of the judiciary. It's quite speculative, obviously, but how could we potentially expect to see the impact manifest in next year's report? What are some of the issues, or how has the backlog basically manifested, or how severe has the backlog been over the COVID period?
Take it at the high court level, at the regional court level, and at the district court level. During the lockdown, those courts could not run as efficiently as they ought to. Remember, that's where most of the trials happen. High courts have got to run trials, civil and criminal. They even have to do circuit courts. The inability to do so has had undesirable consequences. And the same extent, especially to the magistrates' court. It's almost about trials there. And they have not been able to cope with the workload all along. Just imagine what the impact of the workload of the lockdown has been on the proper functioning of those courts. So we can only speculate. We haven't looked into it. We haven't compiled the report yet. But I think the picture is likely to be bleak. Thank you, ma'am.
Back to you, ma'am. Can I check with the colleagues online first? I don't see any hands. Colleagues, you indicate if you want to ask. I don't want you to feel that you're not given a chance. But we'll check the question. I don't see any hands.
Slindolo Masigane again from ENCA. Chief Justice, I'd like to get your thoughts around some of the members of the judiciary who are facing charges, such as
one of them.
such as the President Judge Klope, and also the allegations around the relationship that Deputy Chief Justice Zondo seems to allegedly have had with the former President Jacob Zuma. What do you think these relationships, what kind of impact do they have in terms of the work of the judiciary?
No. What kind of impact does what have?
The alleged relationships or political relationships that members of the judiciary seem to have with some members in the political sphere.
Now we'll have to be very clinical there, and maybe we must take it one by one. Let's deal with, is it Judge President Klope you want to start with, or is it the Deputy Chief Justice you want to start with? And whoever you want to start with, point to the specific problem that you want me to comment on. I don't want to assume that I understand your question when in fact I don't, because I want to be direct in dealing with your question. Just start with a particular person and say, there is a perception that this is a problem, and then you ask your question.
So in terms of the President Klope, the fact that he's facing charges, what kind of impact does that have on the credibility of the judiciary? That's my one question. My second question with regards to the alleged relationship that the Deputy Chief Justice Zondo has with President Zuma, how does that impact on the work of the judiciary?
Okay. Let me start with the second question. I believe that whatever issue we raise in the public domain, we must be raising it because there is reason to believe that there is some substance in that issue. There is lack of clarity. There is need to clarify. What happened? You had two versions. The version of President Jacob Zuma and the version of Deputy Chief Justice Zondo. And the last time I checked, the ruling by the Deputy Chief Justice is very likely to be a subject matter of litigation. Rumor that emerged from the hearing was that a review is likely to be launched. And under those circumstances, it's most inappropriate for me as head of the judiciary to be commenting on a matter involving my deputy that still has to be pronounced upon. I know that I can't sit on any matter involving the commission. that one and any other, including the one of the summons, for instance, because I was very much at the center of the constitution of that commission, because I had to identify the judge to preside over the commission. So I think let's leave that to the court system to iron out for us. But I don't think that the reputation or the credibility of the judiciary is affected in any way whatsoever by that incident. I mean, I'll give you an example. Last year at a briefing of this nature, on the occasion of presenting the annual judicial accountability report, there is an issue I dealt with. And somebody wrote an article saying the opposite of what I said. So Mr. Mube brought it to my attention. He said, but this person has misrepresented what you said. And he contacted the editor. And first the journalist was fuming. Then he said, okay, maybe there will be a reasonable response from the journalist, the editor. The editor was just as unreasonable. And we knew, for reasons I won't go into, that we can't refer the matter to the press ombudsperson. So after some toing and froing with Mr. Mube, and a somewhat watered down apology and amended version came up, which still amounted to a misrepresentation, a deliberate misrepresentation of what I said. Now for somebody to come and say, you know, there is this thing between that journalist and the Chief Justice, does this affect the reputation of the media? I think it's unfair. There's been incidents of journalists reported to have taken brown envelopes and all manner of allegations. Did that ruin the reputation of the media? I don't think so. The public does not expect you to be perfect people, because you are not. The public, the reasonable public, that is, those that do not distort things, do not expect the judiciary to be perfect. They know we are not. So it's inevitable that people will lodge complaints against the judiciary. I'll give you an example. There is a person who goes under the name of Mwepe. I forgot the first name. And I don't know if it is one person. I don't know if it's a man or a woman. I don't know if it's a group of people using a wrong name. That Mwepe, from time to time, and people don't think, really, those that comment on this thing and get taken up by it. Sometime last year, he lied and said he or she sent something to me about corruption in the judiciary in the Free State. I addressed that during the judicial accountability report. He said it's a lie. He never sent anything to me. And two, I'm not the one who deals with those things. It's the Judicial Conduct Committee. And two, to the extent that it amounts to corruption, he must go to the police. I'm not a police person. This year, the person circulated the thing again. And I'm told that the thing went wild. I say, you see now, people don't reflect. They think it's a new thing. They have forgotten that this person circulated the same thing last year. Now, are you going to say that the reputation of the judiciary is under threat because Mwepe says that he reported corruption to me about 5 judges in the Free State and I did not do anything about it? So, the matter is in the hands of the courts, from what I understand, or is going to be placed in the hands of the court. I don't think the integrity of the judiciary or the reputation of the judiciary is before the eyes of all well-meaning and right-thinking South Africans. I don't think it's compromised in any manner whatsoever. Turning back to Judge President Hlophe, I don't think, broadly speaking, the mere fact that allegations against him have been made is here or there. You see, we've been saying to the public, as Chief Justice, I don't have the power to interfere, and I don't. If people want me to have the power, they must speak to Parliament to amend the Constitution and to amend the Judicial Service Act to give the Chief Justice the power, or the Superior Courts Act, to give the Chief Justice the power to intervene when there are allegations in any court. I don't have that power. And I'm not going to, just to try and look powerful and responsive, exercise the power that I don't have, because it's against the doctrine of legality. So we should be pleased that the South African public, though the matter took long to be finalized, we should be pleased that the Judicial Conduct Tribunal sat, judges testified, Judge President testified, we are being held accountable as judges. The public would have been entitled to be worried had the matter been swept under the carpet. It was never swept under the carpet. It's out in the open. It took as long as the Judge Motata matter. It took as long as the judges Preller and Poswa and others matters. Those are the exceptions. Only 3 matters. The many matters that have been referred to the Judicial Service Commission were almost promptly finalized. So it doesn't affect the reputation of the judiciary at all. It's a concern. I'm concerned when things like this crop up. The question is the allegation well-founded? If it is well-founded, then consequences will deal with whatever reputational damage would otherwise have eventuated.
I have another follow-up. I'm not sure if there's somebody else.
Follow-up, okay.
Just another follow-up with regards to the misconduct charges that you're facing following
Yes.
the complaints that have been laid by the organization, I think it's Africa for Palestine. They've released another statement saying they're going to lay another complaint with the Judicial Commission with regards to your recent comments about the vaccine. I would just like to get your remarks with regards to these misconduct charges that you're facing. Do you have a case to answer to?
Well, every South Africa, this is a democratic country. I didn't even see that statement because, as I said, I don't pay much attention to media reports. I think it's proper. Any South African who feels aggrieved by what any judge, any magistrate says, including me, they must lay complaints. Whether the complaints are well-founded or not is a matter that will be decided by the relevant structures. So think about it this way. Some member of the public or members of the public may hate me so much that they are always looking for an opportunity to run me down. They are entitled. They are not under an obligation to love me. They are entitled to say, how can we deal with this man? Let's just report him so that at least maybe when the cases pile up, the public may begin to see him as this irresponsible person who was mistakenly appointed to the position of chief judge. They are entitled to take their chances. So I'll wait for the complaint to come, and I'll deal with it when it comes.
Chief Justice, lastly, if I can just quote from that statement. They say that the Chief Justice is again failing to uphold the integrity of the office and the position he holds by terming certain vaccines as 666 or the devil's vaccines. He is undermining not only the medical science, but also contradicting our government's position on vaccines.
Well, one, I'm entitled to contradict anybody. Why am I not entitled to contradict government? Why? What is there to say I must agree with everything that Parliament or the executive does? Where is it written? People lack understanding. They are desperate for nothing. So they can write whatever they want to write. They have the freedom to do that. It is their right. And people should not look negatively at these people. No. They can pile up as many complaints as they want. It is their right. So I'm not bothered by what they and other people may choose to do about me. But that won't stop me from speaking. No. Whenever I feel that I need to speak, I will speak. I won't seek permission from anybody. It's a free country, this one.
And then just maybe finally from my side, with regards to the vaccine again, now the perception of there is that maybe you might possibly be against any form of vaccination and everything. But the question now is, have you ever in your life been vaccinated like as the rest of us?
With what?
Maybe
For
when you were born, you were vaccinated against polio. And
when I was born, I wasn't old enough to see. What do you mean?
Well, the argument is you might be against this because maybe you don't see a need, or maybe you've never been vaccinated.
But where do they get it from? There is a problem with reporting there. I've seen it in this country. It's actually crazy. Some people don't care about what you say. They care about sensationalizing what you have said, developing a narrative that is not a true reflection of what you have said. So they can extrapolate something and popularize it. Before you know it, there is no correlation between what you actually said and what is being reported on and what is trending. So where did I say I'm against vaccination? Where? That is the problem with South Africa and the reporting. Where is it? So there is, I don't know whether it is the laziness to think or a determination to push a particular agenda against some of us. I don't understand. Where did I say that? Where does it come from? So I'm not against vaccination. No. But any vaccination that will do harm to people, I'm praying against it. And I will never stop. I'm asking anybody who cares about life to pray against it. Not to campaign in the streets about it, because you don't know whether it is good or bad. I don't know. They may all be excellent vaccinations. I don't know. But I'm saying, in case there is a wrong one, that one must not see any light of day. And if anybody now wants to say no vaccination must never be prayed against, I must now be reported to the Judicial Service Commission for praying. It's no longer prayer, it's a political statement disguised as prayer. Let them go ahead and let's see what is going to happen. So all these people, they must know, they can even file as many complaints in their numbers. I'll never stop speaking whenever I feel the need to speak. We've been silent for far too long. I'm not one of those.
I don't see hands on the other side to the colleagues in line, and I don't see any. I think I've exhausted all the questions you had.
Just one
By
short
all
question
means.
from me, Chief Justice.
Yes,
You
ma'am.
previously emphasized...
Let me know your name.
My name is Komosho Mawelane. I'm from Power 987.
Yes, ma'am.
I just want to speak about your emphasis on the independence of the judiciary.
Yes.
If you are satisfied with how things are now.
No, I'm not satisfied with the institutional independence of the judiciary. I think the Office of the Chief Justice as a national department must by statute be rendered fully independent of the executive. The SG must not account to the judiciary partially and partially to the executive via the Minister of Justice and Correctional Services. We are an arm of the state. And if municipalities have institutional independence as well as Chapter 9 institutions, it undermines the independence we deserve to have as the judiciary, to have the administrative responsibilities that pertain to the judiciary still shouldered by the executive, to the point where the Secretary General is appointed by the executive as well as the Deputy Directors General. It is not right. The kind of independence that, for instance, recently I heard my colleague, Judge President Bernard Mwepe, in his capacity as the tax ombud, articulating the need for his office to be independent from SARS. That's the kind of independence, administrative or structural independence that you need in relation to functions that are intimate to the running of the courts. So I'm satisfied that judges are able to produce judgments, have that space available to them to produce judgments without undue interference. If any judge, any magistrate is interfered with, it can only be with his or her permission. That one is well secured. It is the administrative independence or institutional independence that I'm worried about.
Are we good? Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, colleagues. I don't see hands with justice here. I think they are also satisfied. We should be done.
Thank you, good people. Stay safe, and may we see you next year. This thing is there.